remember that tomorrow evening we will conclude our series. And what time do we meet here tomorrow for the cooking class? That's right, 5 p.m. And then we'll have a very brief cooking class here to go over the smoothies and the cheese sauce and sour cream. No, I'm not going to do the sour cream. I just thought I'd make it, but I'm not going to do that tomorrow evening. So, and then we'll conclude at 7 p.m. for our final meeting. So glad you could make it this evening. Let's welcome Dr. Snyder once more.
All right. Thank you, guys. Glad you could be here tonight. So we kind of left off last night talking about protein and caloric density. And as I promised you, I want to talk about boosting your immune system and how we do that. And basically what we've kind of learned already is that we boost our immune system by keeping our body healthy and working at its optimum. So when our weight is right, when we don't have diabetes, when we don't have hypertension and heart disease, we're going to have the best immune system we're going to have. And so we've been addressing that by talking about reversing lifestyle disease, because as we reverse lifestyle disease, we boost our immune system. So with that, that's our topic tonight. I'm going to show you, we talked about this last night, the food caloric density, and just a quick review. This is talking about the calorie densities in different kinds of foods. And so it's calories per pound. So when we look at a pound of whatever substance, how many calories are in this? And we were looking at that from a weight perspective and from a diabetic perspective. And we remember that water and fiber have 0 calories per pound, and oil has 4,000 calories per pound, meaning that if you eat a pound of fiber or water, you're going to get no calories, or a pound of salad will give you about 100, vegetables about 200, fruits about 300, oil 4,000. And that's one of the reasons we tell you to use oil sparingly. What else should we use sparingly? Sugar, that's right. And why? Well, sugar, 1,800 calories per pound. So there's a lot of calories in simple carbohydrates. But I want to compare and contrast here. We're talking about caloric density. I want you to understand nutritional density as well. One of the things that's really interesting is we look at the nutritional content of these foods. As we move from the oil this way, there's no real nutritional value over here. This is all just calories. And as we start to move away from this, the curve would go up like this, to where when we get to this end, except for fiber and water, this is very highly nutritious food right in here. And so you're going to get your best nutrition from the salad, veggies, fruits, whole grains, and the whole plant foods. And so it's an interesting correlation. Someday I'm going to make a graph that illustrates that. So I'm going to start off with just a simple food, lettuce. And I said, let us learn about nutrient density today. So that's where we're going to start. And we're going to move into phytonutrition and look at antioxidants and things like that as well. So, you know, there's a big debate that I've heard among nutritionists and people that are really health conscious that, you know, if you're going to eat a lettuce, you need to eat romaine lettuce, because iceberg lettuce is basically junk food. And so I want to challenge that idea, because God made iceberg lettuce. It's a food, and so it's probably hybridized from something, but who knows. But it's a food. And so how we're going to do this is we're going to do a little bit of analysis by nutrient density. Nutrient density is defined as a ratio of nutrient content in grams to total energy content in calories. And so according to the Dietary Guidelines for Americans from 2005, nutrient-dense foods are those foods that provide substantial amounts of vitamins and minerals and relatively few calories. So if we were to make a formula, it would look kind of like the one we're going to use right here, DRI over RDA. And I won't spend a lot of time on that because we don't really care for this class. What you want to know is what's nutrient dense, what's not. So the nutrient density of any food is calculated for a single nutrient, such as calcium or protein or whatever we want to look at, for the overall nutrient density of the food. By defining nutrient density this way, a nutrient-dense food is a food that delivers a complete nutritional package. So we can look at not just calcium, we can look at potassium and sodium and protein and vitamin A and vitamin C and everything that's in there and get a better picture of what that food is delivering to our bodies. So let's look at the nutrient density of iceberg lettuce compared to romaine lettuce, the junk food iceberg compared to romaine, or so-called junk food. So what we're going to do is we're going to compare the nutrients in terms of 100 calories each. So how much do you have to eat, how much in weight do you have to eat of lettuce to get 100 calories? It's about a pound, right. So I'm going to list each common nutrient. I won't spend a lot of time going through each one. We'll hit some highlights here. And this is just kind of an explanation on how to do it. But here's an example of the model we're going to use. And I showed you the formula already. RL is going to be romaine lettuce, and it'll be in percents. IL will be iceberg lettuce, and also in percents. So let us begin. Protein. Everybody asks me, and we talked about that last night, where do you get your protein? And I always answer, from my lettuce. Everything I eat has protein in it. And you think I'm kidding, but let's take a look. If we look at romaine lettuce, so remember this is 100 calories, has 7.2 grams or 13% of your recommended daily allowance of protein. There's protein in iceberg lettuce as well. 11%, in fact, 6.4 grams. Well, it makes sense. When you're looking at plants, they have colors, right? How are those colors made? They don't just magically appear. The colors are manufactured by the proteins in the plant. So that's where the color comes from. And so if it doesn't have color, if it's albino, it might be lacking. But otherwise, there you go. And fat. Lettuce has fat in it too. Romaine has 1.8 grams per 100 calories, whereas iceberg lettuce has only 1 gram of fat. So from a dietary perspective, the iceberg lettuce is a little bit in the lead here. So fiber, 38 grams is what is recommended. The romaine lettuce has 12.4 grams, 33% of the recommended daily, and iceberg lettuce, 23%. And we can go through vitamin A. We see that romaine lettuce is loaded with vitamin A, a great source of vitamin A. 100 calories of romaine lettuce will give you 1,139% of the recommended daily allowance of vitamin A. And iceberg lettuce, still not bad, 119%. So romaine gets the tip of the hat on that one. Folate, if we look at that, fairly similar, 250% compared to 200%. B1, 35% compared to 24%. B2, 30% compared to 14%. B3, 11 to 5. Little edge with romaine there. B5, 17 to 13, similar. B6, 26 to 18%. Vitamin C, look at this. Iceberg lettuce has 200 milligrams, 222% of the recommended daily allowance of vitamin C in iceberg lettuce as compared to romaine that only has 156%. Still very good. Vitamin E, we need about 15 milligrams, they say. The romaine has 0.76, about 5%. The iceberg lettuce, 9%, a little bit more. Both similar, though. Vitamin K. People that are on blood thinners have to worry about eating lettuce, and this is one of the reasons why, is because it has vitamin K, which will kind of help clot things up. So you're trying to thin things out with a blood thinner, and then you put a bunch of vitamin K and it thickens it back up. So they kind of fight against each other. So the vitamin K in romaine lettuce, about 500%. Iceberg lettuce, 143%. Calcium, very similar, 16 and 11%. Copper, 31, 20%. Iron, 32%. Nice edge for romaine lettuce, but still 16% in the iceberg. Magnesium, 20 and 12%. Manganese, 40 and 38%. Very similar. Phosphorus, 25% romaine. Iceberg lettuce. And for people that have kidney problems, which one is going to be the better choice? The iceberg lettuce. We want to keep the phosphorus down, so that's a better choice for them. Potassium, fairly similar, but romaine gets the edge here at 31%. And finally, looking at some of the more trace metals, selenium, 55 micrograms are recommended, 2.4 or 4% in romaine, 1% in iceberg, zinc with 12%, iceberg 10%, and then the famous omega-3s. So romaine has 41%, so that's very good, and iceberg lettuce has 23%. So you're getting a whole picture here of the nutrition just found in lettuce. Okay, now I would get tired of eating lettuce all the time. If that were my only choice, I'd probably find something else to eat. But nonetheless, we see very, very good nutrition in one of the least calorically dense foods. How about that? So first, compared to romaine lettuce, which is known nutrient-dense food, iceberg lettuce is almost as nutrient-dense. So we just looked at that. It does pretty good. While romaine contains higher levels of most nutrients, iceberg's not far behind. Not only does it contain a wide variety of nutrients, it's also a good source of many of them. On a per calorie comparison, iceberg lettuce has almost as many nutrients as does romaine. So, second, for the same calories as romaine lettuce, iceberg lettuce has more vitamin C, more vitamin E, and third, 100 calories of iceberg exceeds the recommended daily allowance for vitamin A, folate, vitamin C, vitamin K, and has almost a quarter of the recommended intake of omega-3s and essential fatty acid. So that's pretty good. Now, does this mean that you have to consume 100 calories of iceberg lettuce at a meal each day or even consume any at all? No, not really, but this is what I try to emphasize in my classes and with my patients and students, that we're supposed to eat a well-balanced, well-rounded diet. So have variety. Have iceberg at one meal, have romaine at another, mix them up together and another one, and do the same with all the rest of your leafies and veggies. Mix them up. That wide variety, you can see the difference in just two types of lettuces. The biodelivery system for these nutrients is different in every single plant. And our body is able to utilize that biodelivery system to bring to us different nutrient-dense foods to help our body. And so it's good to eat a variety. So, in fact, if you don't have to consume any iceberg lettuce at all, personally I prefer the taste of romaine lettuce, but if you enjoy iceberg, and I do, I enjoy it a lot more than when I made this slide. The only lettuce available at a restaurant is usually iceberg. Don't be afraid to eat it. It's all okay. And so it's not a junk food. Don't think it needs to be shunned. So to put all this in a more realistic perspective relative to the DRI, RDA, and a more usual serving, a 25-calorie serving of iceberg lettuce, which is standard serving, so it's about a quarter of a head, which you'd see in a standard, pretty good adult-sized salad. 6% fiber, B1, B6, vitamin C, 30% vitamin A, 13% folate, 36% vitamin K, 9% iron, 10% manganese, 5% copper, phosphorus, potassium, and 6% omega-3s. All in only 25 calories. Not bad for a junk food, eh? Very good. So enjoy it, please. So that brings us to kind of the meat, if you will, the food of the lecture, nutrigenomics. And so we're going to spend the rest of the time during this lecture looking at nutrigenomics. And you might be scratching your head wondering, what is nutrigenomics? So in a nutshell, it is a scientific study of how your DNA affects the food you eat and how the food you eat affects your DNA, because they have an effect on each other. And so it's really logical that as new information emerges within nutrigenomics, it will provide more scientific, specific information about health consequences and changing eating behaviors at the level of the individual. Oh. How do nutrients react with genetics? Well, there's 3 assumptions that have been made in the study. One is what and how you eat can influence the risk of chronic diseases, of aging, such as cancer, modified multiple cellular processes involved with onset, incidence, progression, and or severity of these diseases. What that's saying is that whatever you eat, remember, genetics loads the gun, lifestyle pulls the trigger, right? And so we think about, that's exactly what this is saying. Whatever we eat is going to pull the trigger on whatever our predisposed genetic disposition might be. Number 2, bioactive food components can influence the human genome directly or indirectly, and thereby influence the expression of genes and gene products. And what we're saying here is that as we eat more healthfully, the genes in our body will express more healthfully. How would that work? Well, just think about what we're talking about. Our immune system is regulated by our genetic makeup. And so when we eat more healthfully, we're going to turn on our immune system into a higher, more effective place. It's just in simple terms. It optimizes your immune system and other systems as well. It's not just immunity, but we're thinking about immunity. And here is one of the assumptions are made is that when we eat right, our immunity is going to get better. And third, health consequences of a diet are dependent on the balance of health and disease states and an individual's genetic background. Again, going back to genetics loads the gun, lifestyle pulls the trigger, and so whatever we put in our body is going to have an influence on what our genetic makeup is and how our body is going to react. All right? Any questions about that? So, when we look at this, unlike drugs, they have specific targets. So when the scientists come up with a formulation to make a drug, say, for diabetes, it has a very specific target that drug is designed for. Unfortunately, oftentimes it hits other targets as well and causes things called side effects. And so all drugs, I don't care which one you get, I haven't found one in our formulary yet that doesn't have a list of side effects. They all have them, every single one of them. You know, when you go to the herbs, you say, well, that's why herbs are better. Herbs have, if they're in the same category as the drug, they have the same side effect profile. For example, antidepressant in the Mayo inhibitor class, St. John's wort, they have identical side effect profiles. So you have to be careful about that. When I was doing my undergraduate at Southern University, there was a person there who was very into health. And he was taking, I don't even know how many dozens of different supplements every day. He died from supplement overdose. So you have to be careful. These things can be just as deadly as the medication. So you need to know what you're doing, okay? So there's also a great redundancy in the structures and functions of various fruit and vegetable compounds. What do we mean by that? Well, there might be one thing that we're looking at, but there may be 6 or 8 or 10 or 20 different similar compounds that help deliver that into the body. And so this becomes important when we start thinking about, well, if I just take a vitamin E supplement, well, there's biodelivery systems in the whole food that helps that vitamin E to be delivered more effectively With lower concentrations, we now know that vitamin E causes cancer in these kind of concentrations, so we don't do it. I give an example here. The red color in tomatoes is due to lycopene and the related carotenoids, phytofluene and phytoene. They help deliver the lycopene to the targeted organs. So this same colorful family of phytochemicals occurs in watermelon and pink grapefruit. But they all have a different level. So as we saw the difference between lettuce and romaine, iceberg and romaine lettuce, we see that they had different levels of everything in it. That's what makes a whole plant food-based diet healthy. We're getting a lot of nutrition from a lot of different places that are targeting different organs in our body. Okay. So, what color is your diet? Ever since farming in the Fertile Crescent, mankind has had an abundance of brown and beige foods, and I showed you a slide with that. Here's another one, similar kind of construction here. Pretty flat, not very colorful. And these are problematic foods for us. So how should it be? We saw some beautiful pictures that I showed you last night. So you can recall in your mind the beautiful produce counter that had all those colors in there. And with that, I want to introduce you to somebody named Kathy. Kathy is one of my patients. She's given me permission to mention her case publicly. Very excitedly and happy to do so. She's a 48-year-old female who showed up for the first time in my office in a wheelchair. The name has been changed. I use a different name sometimes in other talks, so just to protect her identity. She was immobilized by pain and weakness from something called psoriatic arthritis. She was in agony, and even talking with her was difficult to keep her attention. She listened and was willing to do anything to get back on her feet and decrease her pain. And what I did was I introduced to her this plan, the New Start program, and asked her, are you willing to go this far with it? And she was, and we actually spent some time talking about it, and we ended up praying together. And she decided she's going to do this. And so we prayed briefly the first meeting and got started. She had a few follow-ups after that over the next year and a half. She was still in a wheelchair actually the first time I saw her back, but she said her pain was greatly reduced. And after that, she was never in a wheelchair again. I saw her 3 months after the initial visit. She was using a walker, and she hadn't walked in years. She was completely disabled. Her husband had left her. Her life was a disaster. In fact, she was suicidal. She said, if you can't help me, I'm ready to end this whole thing. But she progressed quite nicely. Saw her 6 months later with the walker still. It actually took 18 months, but after 18 months, she came in and she was walking without a walker for the first time in years. And so there was a lot of things that we had to do over the year and a half. We had multiple visits to tweak her diet. We talked on the phone. She wrote me letters. I would respond to her with a phone call. And we kind of tweaked it as we went along, and she kept improving and improving and improving. And I just recall that day that she walked into my office after 18 months. We both had tears streaming down our face, and she was so happy. You know, you could see her life was changed in a very substantial way. So she had gotten a job by then and kind of had her life back on, she's back on her feet again. And I want to introduce you to another couple, John and Pat. Again, the names are changed. Both of them give me permission to use them in public. He was a former National Football League player for the Los Angeles Rams. And it's interesting to me, as I looked at a married couple, how similar their health problems were. Why do you think that might be? They're eating the same stuff, right? So they had very similar health problems, both extremely overweight, both with high cholesterol, both with prediabetes, both with hypertension. The only difference was that she was suffering from what other doctors diagnose as fibromyalgia. You ever heard of that? It's getting more and more common in our society. When I was a kid, nobody had fibromyalgia. You never even heard of it before. But as our obesity epidemic has ramped up, we're seeing these kind of chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia has come into play. She had gout as well in her hands and knees, hips, very painful. So we talked together about biblical lifestyle. They were a little reluctant to go all the way at first. We had to do a little bit of arm twisting. But they finally said, we'll give it a try. We'll see how it goes. But you can see they were pretty skeptical about the whole thing. So I saw them back in a month. I made them promise at least 21 days. Give it at least 21 days. And they promised they'd give it 21 days, and they did. And they came back in a month, and they were still on it. And they were very excited about the changes that they'd already seen in 1 month. Their aches and pains were so much better. Her gout was pretty much completely gone. And what they were doing now, after 1 month, just 1 month, they were out telling everybody they lived in a trailer park. And they were having meetings in the trailer park, teaching people in their trailer park the New Start program. So after 2 months, we went over their labs, and wow, look at this. They both had significant drops in their cholesterol, about 30 points for him, but 100 points for her. Not quite sure, it's a genetic thing why his only went 30 points, but we worked on it. Her pains were nearly all gone. She was amazed. He still had some knee pain, but it was from an injury playing ball. So he was still needing some pain meds for that. She confessed that he was still using a small amount of dairy products and some sweets. And so we had to do some more arm twisting. And he confessed he would do better. At their 6-month check, both were down 100 points on their cholesterol. He went all the way. And I'll tell you, you know, when I showed you that study on the cholesterol the other day, remember it was protein, not fat, that was in the diets. That's what regulated the diets. And so we know that when you're on a high protein diet, it's very difficult to drop your cholesterol. It's really difficult. At their 6-month check, both down 100 points of the cholesterol, both had lost 20 pounds. And the amazing thing that both of their pains were greatly diminished. She demonstrated it by pounding her knuckles that were affected by the gout on the countertop. And I remember going like this. It doesn't hurt anymore, see? They were wonderful. So I credited their success to God. They both were in agreement, and they both said, praise God. And so some about 1 or 2 more times over the years before I moved on to another place, but very happy, and little preachers for the New Start program. They just loved it. They thought it was great. So in the beginning, it was not with all these diseases. It was like this, and we've been over this. Every herb-bearing seed which is upon the face of the earth, every tree which is the fruit of a tree yielding seed, to you it shall be your meat. And to every tree of the garden you may freely eat. That's how we were designed. So perfect diet for a perfect creature made in the image of God. So couldn't we just get our nutrients from a pill? I think I've kind of already addressed that by the bioavailability of these different things, but move that out of the way for a minute. So there's a lot of supplements out there, polyphenols, lutein, lycopene, so on and so forth, folic acid, arginine, quercetin. You know, can we just take that? Can we just get what we need from that? Well, whole plant foods contain many phytochemicals that may be beneficial to health, but are not included among the traditional vitamins and minerals. Remember, you're not getting that bio-delivery system. That is really key in having the nutrients delivered to your body. Now, there's a lot of debates, even among health reformers like myself. Some people are really into the supplements. And so you'll go to some holistic doctors and naturopaths. They put you on a whole list of stuff. Well, I'll tell you, forget that. Eat right. Eat a whole plant-based diet. Eat it whole, and you're going to get everything you need. You don't need to waste your money on tens, maybe hundreds of dollars of supplements every month. And I see people do it all the time. They just released a big study about 3 or 4 years ago. And basically the study said, and they looked at hundreds of thousands of people using supplements, and the study concluded that unless you have a known nutritional deficiency, you are wasting, capital W, wasting your money on supplements, herbs, and vitamins. So,
Do you have anything to say about probiotics?
So probiotics, that's a great question. I can say a lot about it. I could do a whole lecture on probiotics, but I won't. Probiotics are especially helpful in people that are having some functional disorders in the gut. Why do we have functional disorders in the gut? Because we don't eat enough fiber, we don't drink enough water, and so it causes functional disorder in the gut. Probiotics can actually help with that. But I would recommend going to the source of the problem, the fiber and the water, and correct that as well. Other things that can cause it, certain illnesses, viruses can attack our gut and kill off our biome. Probiotics are wonderful for that. If you go on a course of antibiotics, I recommend to my patients 3 to 6 months of probiotics after any course of antibiotics to help correct the gut. When you take an antibiotic, it kills off part of the biome in the gut. And we have studies now showing that obesity, allergies, possibly even things like asthma are related to the gut biome being altered by antibiotics and other things. So yeah, they're very good, very helpful. Probably just like anything else, you could overdo a good thing as well. So color of food, you know, based on meats, grains, very brown, beige-ish. If I could give you that one piece of advice again, and I gave it to you last night as well, abandon meat, flour, and sugar. And we talked about the reasons why we should do that, because these things turn on the disease pathways, the insulin pathways in the body. So these are foods very high in fat, meat, cheese, eggs, milk, and all the dairy products, including yogurt, which is touted as a health food, and it's not. So as opposed to a vegan diet, which is very colorful, based on fruits, nuts, grains, and vegetables. So I threw in this food pyramid. I like this one in particular because at the base, water, lots of water. And so what's the rule of thumb? How much water should you drink every day? If you don't have any kidney disease, you don't have any congestive heart failure, the rule of thumb is half your weight in ounces. So if you weigh 100 pounds, you drink 50 ounces of water. Okay? And I like this also because the fruits and vegetables are at the base. A lot of them have the grains at the base, so they're turned around the other way. I like the fruits and vegetables at the base. I think that should be the basis of our diet. So that's where we get all those colors. And the grains, it has 6 to 11 servings here of the fruits and vegetables, 3 to 5 of the grains, 2 to 3 and dairy substitutes. So what do we mean by that? So like soy products, rice dream, almond milk, things like that. So, and then again, things to use sparingly, oils, sweets, stuff like that. All right, any question about that? Terrific. So we have largely voted for brown food with our wallets. I mentioned that to you, I think, last night or the night before. We get what we pay for. We go into the grocery store and we go up and down the aisles, and these are some of the things you'll see, and we buy them, and they keep restocking them. If we quit buying them, they won't stock them. So, you know, and we go to McDonald's and fast food and all that kind of lifestyle we have, and it's just killing us. So the real problem with all these foods is oxygen. Oxygen radicals are damaging DNA. Brown food promotes the radicals and chemicals that produce this process. God developed a color diet that protects against oxidative damage. So when you eat a plant-based diet, you're actually protecting your body from these radicals that we find in these processed food. So they will damage your DNA, lead to tissue damage, and the onset of cancer. We know very well the initiation, it happens with an oxidative damage. So that's spelled wrong. Sorry, that's a typo. Colors in foods are produced by phytochemicals. Things like antioxidant-rich fruits like strawberries, blueberries, plums, citrus, kiwi fruits, grapes, bananas, apples, tomatoes. And veggies, garlic, kale, spinach, Brussels sprouts, alfalfa sprouts, broccoli, beets, red bell peppers, onions, corn, and so many more. So look at the colors. That's what we're after. We want them to be fresh as we can get them. And we talked about the cancer. Here we're seeing how some of the carcinogens and oxidation byproducts are causing, they set off cancer. And so this is just the step, phase 1, phase 2. So oftentimes there's carcinogens involved in here, and then the protein gets involved and the oxidative products get in here. They damage the DNA, which turns off the machinery in the cell that protects against cancer. And next thing you know, we have a growing tumor, and it's delivering growth factors to it. So it keeps growing, it grows wildly out of control, and that's really what cancer is. It's just tissues that have become abnormal and they don't stop multiplying. They just keep multiplying. They steal the nutrition from the body, calories from the body, and most of us don't have good nutrition, so it's stealing the calories. The body starts to get thin, we lose weight. That's what's happening. The cancer's growing, the body's dying. And so what we want to do with cancer is to get rid of the calories and increase the nutrition. We want to starve the cancer and feed the body. And so again, back to plant-based, where we have the highest level of nutrition on our graph there. We see that in fruits and vegetables and leafy greens and whole grains. That's where we're going to get the best phytonutrition. So Newsweek did a study on this. Well, they didn't do a study. They looked at 4,500 different studies that were done, and they did a spread on this. Cancer and diet, eating to beat the odds, what you need to know. And they concluded in this was published in 1998. It's quite a while ago, 24 years ago. Look at what they concluded. We don't need years of research. If people would implement what we know today, cancer rates would drop. It's that simple. That's Newsweek. That's a secular magazine. They're talking for us. And what they found out is they start looking into cancer and diet. They find that dietary regimens that are plant-based have lower rates of cancer. Dietary regimens that are meat-based, animal-based, they have higher rates of cancer. Well, Dr. T. Colin Campbell published a China study and proved that in the largest epidemiological study ever done in humanity history, showing that the high protein in foods is what initiates and promotes cancer. And he was able to show it so clearly in lab rats. He was able to turn it on and then turn it back off just by altering the diet that was given to the rats. And we see the same thing in humans. So our garden pharmacy, phytochemicals can concentrate themselves in different organs of the body. This is why we want to eat a wide variety of different colors, because they all target different organs in the body. For example, lycopene will concentrate in the male prostate, whereas lutein, zeaxanthine, found in spinach, corn, and other yellow or green leafy vegetables, are concentrated in the retina in the eyes and the lens. And this can translate into reduced cataracts and macular degeneration. Somebody asked about cataracts the other night. There you go. So there's a color code behind this. The carotenoids are chemical compounds that absorb visible light, and so determine that carrots are orange, tomatoes are red, marigolds are yellow. There's about 700, actually I think it's over 800 now, carotenoids that have been isolated from plants and animals. They're absorbed into the bloodstream and end up in the tissues where they protect against DNA damage. So, and I showed you this color wheel the other night. We saw 7 groups: red, red, purple, orange, orange, yellow, yellow, green, green, and white, green. So, and there's some pictures there. Kind of give you an idea of what kind of foods are in there, but I'd like to take a closer look at each group. And so we'll kind of step through that really quickly here. In the red group, So what kind of foods do we see in the red group? Tomatoes, pink grapefruit, watermelons. These are just examples. There's a lot more than just that. So anything red is going to have the lycopenes in it. Lycopenes become more available with cooking. So a lot of people are into raw diets, and they have a place. But in this case, when you cook the tomatoes, you will absorb a higher amount of the lycopenes. And so how did they figure that out? Well, they gave a group raw tomatoes, they gave a group cooked tomatoes. And then they tested their blood for lycopene levels afterwards, and they found that the ones that ate the cooked tomatoes actually have higher levels of lycopene in the body. So in this case, cooking actually helps. So over 80% of the world's supply of lycopene comes from tomatoes. Why is that an interesting fact? Why should we take note here? 80% of the world's supply comes from tomatoes. What are people eating? Tomatoes, right? Are they eating others? Probably not enough. We'd like to see this, I'd like to see this be like 20% of the world's supply comes from tomatoes, and 20% from watermelon, 20% from this red food, and this, and this, and this. So that tells us that we're not eating a very varied diet. That's what it tells us. So we need to work on that. Comment? I saw a hand.
Did you want the question for later, or?
Yeah, we'll do it at the end. Just write it down. So these are some yummy looking tomatoes here. I love tomatoes. So the red-purple group, these include grapes, grape products, prunes, cranberries, blueberries, blackberries, strawberries, red apples. These contain anthocyanins, and anthocyanins are very powerful antioxidants that help prevent heart disease by inhibiting and prevent blood clot formation. Let's move that out of the way. Okay. And plaque formation. So these are the things, this is why I told you the other night, add berries to your granola, add berries to your cereals, because berries help clean the arteries. So that's why they're important, and this is what does the job. Couldn't we just take an anthocyanin for a supplement? Wouldn't that work? I just told you that we need the biodelivery system, don't we? And so there's a biodelivery system in here that helps this come in just so, and it helps the body in the maximum, most optimum way. Some beautiful grapes. Orange group includes carrots, mangoes, apricots, cantaloupes, pumpkin, acorn squash, winter squash, sweet potatoes. They all contain alpha and beta carotenes. Carrots provide about 50% of the American dietary supply of these phytonutrients. What's wrong with that? Too many carrots. We're not eating a varied diet here, are we? So we need, carrots are great. This is a good food, don't get me wrong. Just like tomatoes are great, they're good food. But we need more variety in our diet. Like to see that be like maybe 5% or whatever, so that we're eating a lot of other stuff. All right. Orange-yellow group. These include oranges, their products like orange juice or whatever. Tangerines, peaches, papayas, nectarines. These provide the beta-cryptoxanthins, a minor carotenoid that accounts for 0.03 milligrams of the 6 milligram per day intake of all carotenoids by the average American. What's wrong with that? Well, it's a minor. It's a very small amount. That, again, is telling us we don't eat very many of these things. We need to eat more. 87% of the beta-cryptoxanthins come from oranges. What's wrong with that? Too many oranges. So we don't eat enough from this group as a whole, and when we do, we're eating too much in the way of oranges. So papayas, peaches, nectarines have other purposes and stimulate diversity of diet. And so remember, the biodelivery systems vary from orange-yellow fruit to orange-yellow fruit to orange-yellow vegetable. They all have a different biodelivery system, different carotenoids that are going to affect our body in different ways. So eating a wide variety is very important. So here's some yummy looking oranges. Yellow-green group. So what's in the yellow-green group? Spinach, collard, mustard, turnip, greens, yellow corn, peas, green peas, avocados, honeydews. These provide lutein and zeaxanthin. These carotenoids concentrate in the eyes, we already mentioned that, and contribute to good eye health. Lower intakes have been associated with cataracts. So if we're developing cataracts, this is a group we probably want to address in our diet. And age-related macular degeneration. That's why they give you lutein. If you're developing macular degeneration, the eye doctor will give you lutein as a supplement. Please take this. I would coach you, please eat more yellow-green foods. This is where you're going to get your lutein from, and it will be delivered into your body more effectively than the supplement that the doctor's going to give you. And note this, macular degeneration, which is the primary preventable cause of blindness in America, okay, can be prevented. The green group includes broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, Chinese cabbage, bok choy, I love bok choy, kale. These contain the sulforaphane and isocyanates and indoles. These stimulate the genes in your liver to turn on the production of enzymes that break down what? Cancer-causing chemicals in the body. So when we're looking at a cancer patient, these are really important foods. We want to put these in our juices that we give to cancer patients so we can concentrate these nutrients and biodeliveries so we can help break down that cancer more effectively. The white-green group includes garlic, because I love garlic, and onions and celery and pears. I probably eat too much garlic. White grapes, endives, chives. These contain allicin. Allicin's been shown to have anti-tumor and antibiotic properties. These foods are also rich in flavonoids, including quercetin and camphorol. We eat more flavonoids than any other antioxidants, so we eat lots of garlic, lots of onions, celery. It's big in our diet. So we get a lot of these, up to 1 gram a day. There's much research with flavonoids that is still ongoing. So some wonderful looking pears. Again, just to recap the color wheel, it's important that when you look at this color wheel, how do we use it? We should eat at least one food from each of the color groups each day. We should add to these foods legumes, soy, nuts, whole grains, smaller amounts, no sugar or flour if you're trying to lose weight. So if your idea of fruit is apples and bananas, then you need to make big changes in your life because that's not enough. It's not varied enough. And discovery time. So how many people ask me all the time, what do you eat? They're astonished that I'm a vegetarian. What do you eat? Like there's nothing to eat, you know? And I always ask them, well, what do you eat? And, you know, I say, so you eat fish, right? Yeah, fish. Do you eat beef? Yeah, I eat beef. Do you eat chicken? Yeah, I eat chicken. What else do you eat? There's over 150,000 edible plants in the world, and we've talked about 40 or 50 of them in this discussion. The average grocery store in the United States carries about 200 different produce items. So when you go into the produce department, you'll see you have a variety of about 200 things to choose from. It seems that in the USA we have more choices of automobiles that get 30 miles per gallon or better than we do fruits and vegetables. Is this where our priorities lie? Question mark. So the average grocery store in Japan, on the other hand, carries about 2,000 different produce items. They have a much wider variety of choice than we do. Again, we get what we pay for. And so we need to start asking the produce manager, can you bring in this? Can you bring in that? I don't see this. I'd like to try it, you know, things like that. And they'll listen. So some suggestions to broaden your palate. When was the last time you ate a fig? Yeah, they're really good. They're very sweet. I love avocados. We eat lots of them in our house. How about guava? You know, you walk around some of our communities here in Petaluma, there's guava trees, just bushes growing around. Wow. You just pick them and eat them. They're really tasty. Kiwis, we get a lot more here in California than you do in other places. Kumquats. Have you ever eaten a kumquat? Yeah? So it's not stuff that we readily see. How about lychee fruit from China? Yeah. I'm starting to see it in the grocery store. Mangoes, papayas, passion fruit, persimmons. My grandmother had a persimmon tree. Pomegranates, star fruit. Why are pomegranates so hard to eat? Oh, let me tell you something about pomegranates. When they look at antioxidants, everything, goji berries, all the blueberries, everything, they compare it all to pomegranate. Pomegranate is the best antioxidant on the planet, and everything is compared to pomegranate. So why is it so hard to eat?
I don't know, it is.
You have to work at it.
Yeah, you do.
If you peel it under a bowl of water, it's easier and cleaner.
Okay,
I saw that in one of our health magazines.
very good.
Saw a big difference.
I like that. So peel it in a bowl of water, she says. It makes a big difference. Star fruit, watercress. When was the last time you had a watercress salad? Yeah, you know what? When I was a Boy Scout, we used to collect watercress, and that would be part of our meal. We did a lot of edibles in the wild. Tarragon, and there's a whole bunch of others, 150,000 of them. So what about nuts? Nuts have phytochemicals as well. Flavonoids are found in all nuts. Peanuts are not nuts. They're a legume. Nuts are a good source of thiamine, niacin, phosphorus, zinc, and folate. Some nuts are excellent sources of selenium, copper, magnesium, manganese, and vitamin E. So there's some nice nuts. Sometimes you feel like a nut. Nuts are a great source of protein and are high in good plant sterols. They did the EPIC study in Europe, actually shows the more nuts you eat, the less cardiovascular disease you have. It doesn't seem to end. Our rule of thumb was always a handful a day, especially if you're trying to lose weight. That's about 100 calories, what you can put in your hand. And so if you're trying to lose weight, you probably don't want to eat a lot of nuts because they are high in calories. But for heart protection, you could freely eat of them, and it will lower your risk of heart disease. Almonds and walnuts are rich source of omega-3s. Don't eat too many, 100 calories per handful. So, questions?
Oh, one part, when you have a whole, raw food diet,
Uh-huh.
that you have to make sure you blood type. Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, I know a little bit about it. I know that there's contradictory evidence to that, and so I don't really teach that. So I'm going to tell you what I teach to you. I have been an avid reader of a lot of people who do health, and I've been to lots of programs like McDougall and Arizona State University Wellness Program and Cornell and places and people like that. I read a lot of Ellen G. White. And I have found that she's the most reliable source for health information. So I teach you what she has taught me that I can back up with science. So if I can't back it up with science, you don't hear about it. But I'd encourage you to read for yourself. So I like that combination. I've found it to be pretty flawless. It's pretty hard to beat. And so there's just too many people that have been doing it for way too long. And I think it has a very proven track record. Any other questions this evening? Yes, please.
Last night you were talking about the things how to prioritize your eating.
Yes.
Salad, concentrated carbs, then your vegetables.
Yes,
and
yes,
then
yes, yes.
what's next, but then came nuts.
Yes.
And I'm thinking, do you mean like a protein made out of nuts? Or are you talking about actually nuts in your hand and you just pick and eat it?
Well, remember, whole plant food's eaten whole. But we talked about that. You know, if you eat lettuce and broccoli every day, you're going to get tired of that. So we use nuts and seeds to make sauces. We have a beautiful cashew pimento sauce back here in the back. That is a great example of a wonderful protein made from cashews, very tasty, and it's wonderful in haystacks and nachos and things like that. So if you didn't try it yet, please do.
And where does soup fit in?
Soup. So soup is a vegetable, right? Mostly, unless you have fruit soup. I like fruit soup, so it's really yummy.
Like first or last from your salad, your
So how I like to think of it, if you will just kind of follow this, exclude the water, right? We drink the water well before a meal and after the meal, not with the meal, because we want good digestive process to not be interfered. If you kind of look at your salads, veggies, fruits, those are the kind of things you want to eat first. Those are usually things that are served more whole. And so they're going to take up more space in the gut. And that will cause us to eat less of the cashew pimento cheese sauce and other things that are more concentrated calorically. And so, because we can get a lot of calories from that. Yes?
You also said you were going to talk about different foods that pertain to different ailments. Which are the foods that you can prescribe to people who have asthma, allergies, and so forth? What are the foods that help that situation?
So when you're looking at, again, I go right back to, well, let me back up. This is one of the things that really helped me. I have been allergic to everything under the sun my whole life and had asthma so bad. When I became a vegan, almost all of those symptoms disappeared. So a target food, not as clear about asthma and that kind of thing, but I would say the great variety, plant-based, without the animal inflammatory markers, without the sugar, without the flour, because those are very inflammatory, will really calm down any inflammatory process you have going on in your body. Remember John and Pat, the Los Angeles Ram? That's one of the most common things I hear after I get somebody on the program, how their aches and pains seem to really diminish or go away. And so that's from an inflammatory process. So I would remind you that all of the lifestyle diseases have an inflammatory basis to it. And so that's one of the reasons why this works so well, is because we drop the inflammation down and the disease process begins to reverse. So, okay, yeah. Yes?
Where do beets fit in?
Where do beets fit in? Oh, they're a wonderful food. Look at the,
I don't know how you classify them.
well, that would probably be in the red-purple group. Yeah.
Okay, and I've seen a lot of advertisements for beet powders that are supplements and how they're supposed to be like miracle things.
Oh, yeah.
So,
So I just
would you
had,
recommend that you have raw beets?
yes, yeah, whole plant foods eaten whole. In fact, I have a story I can tell you. I have a very good friend who decided he was going to do super beets.
Yeah.
And so he went on super beets for, it was just a couple of weeks, and he called me one weekend and he said, oh, these things are, I think they're causing my heart to beat too fast. So they gave him arrhythmia. And so when I told him to stop taking it, just get beets, eat beets, and sure enough, the arrhythmia went away. And so,
Okay, I got
Yeah.
something to add about the beets. Oliver's Market is the only place I've ever seen raw beets sold in the salad bar that are very finely shredded.
Ah,
And
yeah.
of course, their salad bar isn't the cheapest around.
Right.
But getting your whole kitchen all the color of red doesn't sound like fun.
right.
So I simply stock up on them whenever I'm up here.
There you
I
go.
don't have Oliver's Market in the rim.
Right, okay, there you go. So, yeah, it's a wonderful food. Anybody else? Any other questions? Now's your chance. Yes?
Where do you classify the root veggies like potatoes and yucca and other,
Oh, see, those are plants we didn't even talk about, right? So,
country we have a lot of those veggies that you don't have here.
yeah, no, they're great. So I'd be looking at kind of the white, that kind of thing. Yeah, there's yellows, yeah, white, yellow, green, and probably yellow. type of vegetables. And that's probably where they'll fall in. I haven't done research on those in particular, but that's where I would, you can kind of look at the color of something and see where it's going to fit in the color wheel, so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so if we were to look on Google or someplace, we could probably find a
Yeah,
list of all the
There-
colors and what they do.
yeah, there is a book, I'm trying to remember the author's name, but it's called What Color is Your Diet? And the author goes into great detail about this. In fact, I will credit them with the color wheel. That's where I got it from, so.
What about COQ10?
CoQ10. So CoQ10, CoQ10 is something our body manufactures. So it's an,
The older it diminishes, so.
right, it diminishes. And so why does that happen? So it diminishes, what are all the studies done on? The normal population in the United States are all people that eat the standard American diet. And so in their population it diminishes. I haven't seen a good study where we look at plant-based people and what their CoQ10 does. We see the same thing with iron and other nutrients as well. And so we also see that in older folks that the glucose tends to kind of trend and drift up. But is that from diet or is that from age? Or is that from being on a diet for a long period of time because of your age? So that's not as clear. So how I use CoQ10 in my patient population is if they're on a statin, take it because statins will deplete your CoQ10. So that's typically how I use it. I really feel strongly that for the most part, the only supplement we really need in this area is vitamin D because of the latitude in which we live, or anything you have a nutritional deficiency in should be replaced. Otherwise, vitamin D, and if you're strict vegan, you may want to consider a vitamin B12. I always recommend it, even though nowadays it's easier to get. If you're eating more organic, you're going to get more vitamin B12 than you would if you're not. So that microbiofilm over the fruit or vegetable has B12 in it. So yeah,
That's what I was gonna ask.
yeah, perfect. Yeah,
If you say it's unwashed and it's organic, then you get that.
you're going to ingest that natural B12. And Milton Crane, who was a researcher in vitamin B12, he held that we only needed about 4 or 5 micrograms a day. So it's not very much. And so getting it from organics actually is very feasible. So another comment, question? Go ahead, Catherine.
What vegetables have vitamin D?
Vitamin D. So vitamin D is something that our body manufactures from the sun. And so when we find it in foods, it's been supplemented. So like your dairy milk, they put vitamin D in it. There's a lot of things they put vitamin D in now, but it's a supplement. But the reason we need vitamin D here is because the angle of the sun, we're so far north, that the angle of the sun isn't good enough to help our skin produce the vitamin D levels that we need, especially in the wintertime. Summer may not be too bad here. So I just recommend, don't go and ask your doctor, please test my vitamin D level. Just take it. A couple thousand units a day, it's fine. You can't OD on it unless you do like 1 million units in a week. Then maybe you could, okay? And I saw another hand over here somewhere, yes.
Yeah, I have a friend that she has problems with the stomach, with about digesting almost everything.
Mm-hmm.
So I hear that the doctor recommend her just white liquids.
White liquids.
Just white liquids or white.
Okay. So a lot of times in people that have like irritable bowel disorders, they don't respond very well to dietary changes. And some have reactions against plant-based foods. And so we have to be really careful. But this is not a lifestyle disease. This is a disease where the gut has been damaged by something. And so the rules don't apply as evenly when we're talking about Crohn's disease or irritable bowel disease. And I assume from your description that may be along the lines of what's going on with your friend. And so she is going to need, or he is going to need, probably a specialized diet. I would still recommend, as best you can, to go plant-based. There are ways that you can manage that by juicing that will get past the problem they have with the fiber. And again, it's very individualized, so that's very case by case. One person will tolerate one thing and another person will not with the same disease. And so they have to do trial by error to figure out what works for them. So, yeah. Yes, you're welcome. Anybody else? All right, very good. Thank you very much. You've been great tonight. It's been a pleasure to be here. We'll start again tomorrow with the cooking class at what time? 5 o'clock, okay? So everybody be here at 5 o'clock, and then we'll have a lecture at 7, yes.
Will we get the recipes for those goodies that are there tonight?
He's shaking his head yes. Okay?
Do you have a recipe for granola that doesn't have sugar?
Yeah, you can do, that's easy.
That's pretty easy.
Yeah, that's not hard. So,
So do you have a recipe for it?
not on me, but yeah.
Something you might bring.
My wife has it. I'll try to remember to bring that, so, yeah. Do you have a Weimar cookbook?
No.
Oh.
That's all the problem?
Get the New Start cookbook,
Okay.
and they have it in there.
Okay.
I think 7 Secrets as well has one,
Oh, okay.
so that's a good one. I love that cookbook because the pages are laminated, and so if you spill stuff on it, you can just wipe it off. And,
We need that.
yeah.
I'll bring that cookbook tomorrow night, Scott, so you can
Oh, okay.
go through it.
Oh, okay, thanks.
Okay?
Tomorrow it is.
All right. And you can always alter every recipe. You know, if it's calling for sugar, you just can't have any sugar in your diet for whatever reason, just take it out, right? And like New Start, 7 Secrets, they're going to use apple juice or grape juice or, you know, whiz bananas or dates, you know, in a fluid that, yeah, to sweeten it up. So, okay? All right, very good. Have a good evening, everybody. Thank you. See you tomorrow night.